I'm gonna show you guys a couple things you can do for your drum mixes, sounding like this to this. Drums are super simple. They are one of the most important things. Just using all plugins, no analog gear for this one. Cut your toms out. You don't want your bleed in there. I usually start with kick and snare. Don't overcomplicate it. Sometimes you get really weird build-up frequencies in the kick. Doesn't matter what specific frequency you have. Every kick is tuned different. Every kick is mic different. Every mic has a different frequency response. So not one way is gonna work. I usually take out around 300. In this case, it was closer to 200. I guess we could listen to it. Bubbly, boxy thing. I just didn't like it. Obviously, I needed some low end. Obviously, I wanted a little bit more click. I'm using 0 triggers, 0 samples. This is my actual kick drum. Super simple. Tune it correctly. Use the right microphone. Yes, it helps to have good preamps. I'm using some over here. A little bit of compression. Everybody's setting's going to be different. I usually go 4-to-1 or 5-to-1. Do not want to take the transients off. One of the most important things with drum. In fact, sometimes I use a transient shaper to get more transient in there. The more I mix, I actually have to hold back on transients because I do such a good job at letting the transient come through. Go slow attack. If you go a quick attack, it will pull your transient off. Not going all the way slow. I need it to hold back a little bit. Sometimes I do throw this EQ on here, and I am gating it. Without the gate, you can hear a lot of bleed. Here's my gate. I don't always use a gate. Sometimes I do like a little bit of bleed. I will leave some bleed in my snare drum just because the 57 on the top of the snare does pick up some good stuff. I do something similar on the snare. Whatever your vibe is, that's what you're gonna go for. This is my vibe. And it is important to mention, everything in music is about emotion. Everything in music is about feel. There's no right or wrong. If you get the sound that you like, chances are somebody else is gonna like it. I gated it to get rid of some bleed. I added some EQ to get rid of some weird frequencies. I also added some low end just to clean it up off the bat. I'm using the same compressor, similar settings. For some reason, my transient's super out of control on the snare drum. I'm going a little bit quicker attack on that. That's going to smooth that out for me. It's more of an aggressive setting, especially with the threshold here. Here's the kicker. I'm pulling back on the mix knob, so it's almost like parallel compression. If you don't know what that is, I don't know what to tell you. Google it. After that, I did want to make a couple EQ adjustments, so I added another EQ. Literally, it doesn't matter. You can crank knobs here and there as long as you get the sound that you're looking for. This is what I wanted. It's really ringy. For some people, that's not ideal, but I liked the sound, so that's what I did. I am adding a little bit of distortion. Again, it's all about feel. I mean, this is just a really simple distortion plugin that I get from Kilohertz. Add a little bit of energy to your snare drum. I'll show you with and without. Here's without. Here's with. So that actually smooths out some transients for me, gives it more of a cohesive frequency response when you hear that snare drum. In the overall mix, you do notice a big difference when you do that. I did the exact same thing, just with different settings for the kick drum here. It's literally all about manipulating transients, pulling out weird frequencies, giving everything its own separation, but not only that, also gelling frequencies together. So that's where everyone gets it wrong, is when you do too much separation and it just sounds weird. Sometimes you actually do have to gel the frequencies together to make it sound really cohesive. It's an art. You want it to be separated and have everything have its own spot, but you can't have it so separated that there's no vibe. It doesn't sound cohesive and it just sounds like everything's not together, if that makes any sense. Toms, I'm really simple on toms. EQ adjustments, and it actually looks like I did a lot on these ones. I shaped these just to get low end and some attack in there. That's why I have the high end. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just roll off a little bit of low end. I love sending toms to its own verb track just to give it some room and some space. I think they sound awesome when you throw some verb on toms. Using transient shapers, really big on drums in order to get more attack or more sustain. Here's my limiter setting. Pushing the limiter down, the slower the release is, the more sustain you have. So again, that manipulates how your audio actually sounds. That's it. I mean, you can get by with using EQ, a limiter, and a transient shape, or just EQ and a compressor, EQ and a limiter. Then you use all the other little tools to help you out. The reverb, the saturation, the distortion is a big one. I don't know why nobody's using distortion. It's like it makes or breaks your mix sometimes. Room track, really simple, EQ and limiter. That's all I needed. I didn't need anything else. See, nothing really going on. The low end can get super muddy, super quick, and it sounds horrible. It's still down to 20 hertz. You hear the full frequency spectrum. I just didn't want all the buildup in the low end. You may not be able to hear it, but you can feel it. Limiters, crushing it. I have it really low, so I have to turn up the gain all the way, and then I have to turn my output gain all the way down, kind of match it. So that's what I have going on there. Sometimes if you manipulate your release setting, that'll either bring out your snare and your kick and push down the cymbals, or it'll push down your snare and kick and bring out the cymbals. And it's one of the toughest things for me to do is get that right in relation to my overheads. Big one to get out harsh frequencies is going to be soothe. Apparently I did a good job. I didn't even use soothe on this. Also, putting your limiters or compressors into dual mono. I use a splitter in my settings here to do that. That way, if you hit a crash on the right, it doesn't pull down the volume of your hi-hat or your crash on the left. The drum bus, that is where I added soothe. It's a great plugin. It's a resonance suppressor. It gets rid of harsh frequencies before you bounce setting. Real subtle on that. And then the CLA Mix Hub is one of my favorites. If I'm not using analog gear, I'm using this. I can actually drive more saturation. Again, talking about vibe, talking about distortion, harmonic distortion, saturation. I drive the mic knob and it adds saturation to my mix. And then you can use any EQ setting you want to get the vibe you want. It's actually a big difference. I'll show you before and after. Let's turn it off. Turn it on. Way more energy. Everything else I did was super subtle up until this point. Now I'm driving it and I'm bringing in a lot more energy again, getting rid of some harsh frequencies, finishing with, you guessed it, a saturation knob to drive some more energy in there. I'll do it before and after on this one for you too. So before and after. All live acoustic drums, no triggers, no samples. That's how I do it. Hope that video helped. Just a couple little simple things you can do. It's all about manipulating what you're hearing, really, and not overdoing it. If you overdo it, it's going to sound way too compressed, way too processed, and not natural. Keep it as natural as possible. Tune your drums right, clean your cymbals, get a really good recording from the start. If you have good preamps, that's a huge plus. If the recording's really good, you shouldn't have to do that much. So that's pretty much the process of how I do everything. I've been doing it for a while, but let me know in the comments, what you guys think. What do you guys do for your drum mixes? Because I'm constantly changing methods and learning things. That's just what works for me now. I've done things a lot different in the past. Music is constantly changing, constantly evolving. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know how you guys use your methods when you're doing mixing. Love to learn, love to check it out. I'll see you next time.